Okay, guys, here we are, lesson 13. I'm just setting up all of my technological equipment here. And as always, I'm getting going on my EduCreations recording. The EduCreations recording are always available on EduCreations, and I just sent out some new information just earlier this morning. Anyway, and I hope that you can see okay with what's going on with all the different things that I've got on the screen. If you are not able to see perfectly now, check it out on EduCreations. Okay, so I've been talking, last week was all about sun gazing and intentionally manifesting in divine co-creative partnership with the sun. I'm going to try moving this projector down a little bit so that you can see it a little better. Good, I think I did it. To the side. Good. Divine co-creative partnership with the sun. That basically the idea is that you have a tiny singularity inside of you, and I bring up this. Here we go. Let's start with pictures. I am always most comfortable when I get to just speak with pictures. So I know it's a little bit blurry back there, but I know you can see this. This central part right there. First of all, in your physical body, that is the location of your pineal gland. And I know that I've done pineal gland before, but I'll do pineal gland again a little bit. This is the sightless eye. The eye that is right in here. It's part of the glandular network that is in the center of your brain, similar to the limbic system. And I call it sightless because it does not have a cornea or an aperture through which light can enter. But it does have a lot of the other aspects of anatomy that your regular eye has, including a nerve that brings impulses to and from this eye, and a retina, a photosensitive material on the back of the eye. And what is special about your pineal gland is that it is activated not by physical light particles from the outside world, but by non-physical or energy or mind direct stimulation, okay? And that is a physical gland, meaning that upon death, you may be autopsied, and they may cut open your skull and find that actual gland deep inside of your skull. To contrast that with this apparatus right here, which is a drawing that I did and shows the intersection of your indigo chakra, that is like the face plate in front of your face, and your violet chakra, that is like the helicopter rotor up above your head. And the place where those two come together is exactly where your pineal gland is. It's the center of your brain. So that is a very special place in terms of the intersection of your biology and your energy. Because after you are dead, your energy systems are no longer active and functional. Science cannot dissect you and see your energy systems, so it cannot see that this intersection coincided with the gland. And I will also give a brief tangent. If you have Netflix and you have time, I heartily recommend The Pyramid Code, which is a multi-part series, and it talks about the ancient wisdom teaching of Egypt from the point of view of a man who must be in his 80s, and he's a holder of the wisdom tradition of the indigenous people of that area of the world. He speaks about how Western archaeologists misinterpret a lot of hieroglyphics and a lot of the costume, ritual headdresses, and the ways that the Egyptians dressed, that this wisdom teacher says that the Egyptians were always referring to the glands. That's the, like the endocrine system of your body, that all of these headdresses and various other regalia were meant to evoke the shape of some of the physical, biological glands that are within the body. And it's the understanding that activating these glands with your energy system brings you to a higher state of consciousness. So I'm just going to hold on a minute because my video is a little slow, let the video catch up. But this is the understanding that it is through the influence of these glands and what they emit that we are changing on a physiological, biological level in exactly the same way that a caterpillar, when it goes into a cocoon and is within the chrysalis, the caterpillar is exposed to a variety of endogenous chemicals that dissolve its caterpillarness and turn it into a pile of goo. And essentially all of the amino acids and proteins get restructured into a new format. And that new format is the adult format, the winged format. So it's also going from a being that is linear and two-dimensional, stuck to the surface of a leaf or stuck to the surface of a branch, and then going through this transformative metamorphosis change, under the influence of various endogenous chemicals and hormones, that allows this being to all of a sudden travel in a higher dimension, the third dimension, to have wings and fly. All of a sudden you can fly from leaf to leaf. You don't have to climb all the way down the trunk and get on the ground and then climb all the way up the next stem and then get to the next leaf. It's pretty amazing being able to fly directly from flower to flower. And this has everything to do with our innate consciousness. Imagine that you don't have to travel with your innate consciousness in linear time in order to achieve what you would like to achieve. Imagine that you can go from flower to flower or from moment to moment without all of the connective integument to be able to experience just the highlights that you wish to experience. So that's just one brief example, or another example would be speaking with people in various different times. Like now I'm speaking to someone in 2014, but now I'm as a butterfly, I might want to flit to the next flower, which might be 2047 off screen. And then I might want to talk to someone in 1783, and I can fly there with my consciousness. There's a lot of barriers between where humanity currently stands and the capacity to do this. And the barriers are thinking like a caterpillar, basically, thinking in a linear, two-dimensional, limited state, as opposed to in an expanded, non-linear, non-binary state. So there's a lot that is being done right now in the quantum computing world, and this is very necessary because computers are the physical outgrowth of your own inner organic computer, your mind, and creating a computer externally that runs on just ones or zeros, having only two options, is very limited. And that represents some of the inborn limitations that humanity has, and is then projecting those limitations on the technology and equipment that is created. I am being prompted in an inner sense to wrap up this portion and get going really on techniques for sun gazing, because this is important stuff. And I'm happy that the people that are on this video conference right now are people that are in this class and are committed to actually doing all of the lessons and aren't just hopping in and out, because this is pretty important stuff. And I do not want people to injure themselves or injure their eyes by sun gazing in an incorrect way. So this is all about, gaining this anatomy. I likened this in last week's class to going through adolescence and spiritual puberty, that the influence of the glands and the endocrine system in your body bathing you with new hormones is changing your structure of your physical body, and of course the experience and perception of your spirit, your emotion, and your non-physical body. That all of those aspects of self are being affected by the physical changes of your physical body. And those changes are very necessary. Those are like hardware upgrades so that you can get the software upgrade. And the software upgrade is a change in the pattern of your DNA. So this is pretty important stuff, because you don't have to pay any money to go outside and be exposed to the sunlight. Thank God. No one has stolen all the sunlight, and you can still go outside and get that information directly, because that is where you will find the downloads and patches, like software patches for your genetic code. So the first thing is, let's talk briefly about quantum entanglement, and let me just take a little drink. Quantum entanglement is the theory that photons can be partners, and that what photons are doing, like if I have these two partners, even if I might move them millions of miles apart, that they still mirror what they are doing. So if this partner is jumping up and down, this partner jumps up and down. So the idea of quantum entanglement is, let's say on the sun, photons are born or created in pairs, and one of those photons is emitted from the sun, and one of them stays. And the sun is able to essentially calculate the difference between the two and tell what is going on with the trajectory of the photon that has gone. So this is like basically saying that you yourself are accumulated light in the form of physical matter and in the form of consciousness and energy that makes your neurology move and makes you more than just a dead corpse, that you are information from the sun, and that you are here as an experiencer in the first person and as a conduit to broadcast that experience. And that it is incredibly important and valuable information to the sun to know what is going on here on the surface of the planet from your individual viewpoint. So there's a lot of programming here. There's a lot of programming that, first of all, denigrates or devalues you as an individual, that says you are just one lowly person, one lowly worm, and your viewpoint doesn't matter. After all, you don't have a lot of money, you don't own a giant company, you're not president of the United States, you're nothing and you're small. That is not true. Each one of us is magnificent and has a magnificent viewpoint that matters and that the sun wants to know about. However, not everybody is well connected or sends their broadcasts in real time. So just like doing these video conferences, sometimes the video lags, sometimes the audio might not be perfect, sometimes it's choppy and takes time to, it breaks up a little bit and you don't catch every single thing that I'm saying. Think about the lack of continuity of broadcast of consciousness that the sun experiences from humanity. Mostly what causes the lag or the lack of continuity is the hacked operating system. Now, I've spoken about this so much, and you guys are my class people, you've been in class for a very long time, so you know what I'm talking about, that the human mind, the verbalized mind, the mind with which I'm flapping my mouth parts and using it to communicate with you, is a hacked operating system. And it's hacked in the sense that it is not always within one's control. Sometimes it is within the control of the being who created it or the beings who use it for their own agenda. So the main issue is that once you get the hacked operating system installed, it becomes more difficult to turn off the verbalized conscious mind and connect to solar consciousness. And solar consciousness is, first of all, exponentially larger than your tiny, limited, human-sized consciousness. Think in terms of connectivity. So it's not just the size of a brain. Like, what if you had a giant brain, but it was made out of, you know, two really giant neurons? That's a giant brain, but still it's only two neurons. That's not that much connectivity. So when we are talking about the size of consciousness and the size of an entity, let's consider not only the size of the material itself, like the sun is very large and very massive, but let's also consider the number of connections that one might make within such a massive structure. So in terms of both size and connectivity, the sun is an incredibly complex and sophisticated point of consciousness. And I was speaking about in last week's class that it is only a point of consciousness, and it is connected on a network of consciousness to all of the other stars and to the great galactic central sun, which basically is like saying our entire galaxy, all of the stars that are in our galaxy, is one being. But it's a being that does not live all at once. It's living spread out over time. So that's a good way of thinking about it. When I know it's hard because you think like a caterpillar. It's hard. You think like a caterpillar, like an inchworm, like inching along, you know. You think like breakfast, lunch, dinner. So it can be very hard to think about the consciousness of an entity that might be spread over time. But what if you can be living concurrently during breakfast, during lunch, and also during dinner? Hello there. Yes, I broadcast from a community arts center where there are often other meetings that are going on, so that's why there are some people moving through. But it is possible to have concurrent consciousness or nested consciousness, or the understanding that if this is the galactic center and this is Earth, it would take a long time for speed of light transmissions to get all the way over there. And that in order to, oh good, it's Noel, in order to speak to the galactic center, we are not moving in linear time, that we are moving in non-linear time. And essentially what I'm doing is folding space so that myself and the galactic center are almost touching. And this is what I speak about in lesson 13 on the recorded lesson. I'm going to shift things around back here behind me a little bit. Utilizing, and Noel, if you don't mind, oh, that's fine. We don't mind if you're just showing up now, but I know you've got birds. We love your birds, but they're a bit loud, so if you don't mind muting them. Great to see you, and Noel, I want you to know I was answering the question or elucidating a little bit about the Israelites and biblical history and the exodus from Egypt and the genetic structure of certain aspects of society. So there was a little bit there, and maybe Mike will inform you about it sometime, or maybe we'll have a discussion after class sometime. But back to connecting to the singularity that is in the sun. So, okay, first of all, this is a picture. This is a study from, and I know it's a bit blurry on the screen, but you can tune in on EduCreations to see it more clearly. This is called Birth of a New Dimension, which is going to be the name of my upcoming 1-hour radio broadcast on UCY radio, internet radio. So this is a study that I did for a larger painting. This is just an element that's up at the top, but this is all about the transformation of Earth from a donut-shaped or toroidal energy field into a flying rainbow lasagna or hyper-toroidal energy field, right? And this has everything to do with my personal relationship with the sun and the Earth and what is happening with planetary ascension. So my name, Aurora, this is not by accident that my name is Aurora, and Aurora is the name of the phenomenon that arises from the interplay of the solar wind and Earth's magnetic field. So Earth's magnetic field is also a shield that prevents excessive energy from reaching the surface of the planet and disturbing life as it is developing there. The magnetic field around Earth channels that energy that is excessive during solar storms to the poles, all right? And what you need, the enzyme that you require in order to unlock all of the information that I'm giving you, is that what is happening on a planetary level is also happening on an individual level, and is also happening on a cellular and subcellular or genetic level, and then even on an atomic level and on a galactic level. So when the sun is emitting consciousness, now let's even just think about that, because each one of us is familiar with the phenomenon of going into the sun and experiencing a change. Your skin might have felt warmer from going into the sun, and might even have changed colors. It might have turned tan or pink or red or splotchy, you know, who knows what might have happened. But the point is, we take it for granted, and I bring this up because it is the type of thing that a visitor understands from experience, but a native takes it for granted. That being exposed to the sun causes changes. So it causes the visible biological changes of warming and slightly browning your skin. And as a tangent, so that you can speak on trivial matters at dinner parties, the browning of your skin happens due to a process called the Maillard reaction, which is actually the same process that happens when a steak is cooked on the grill. And it has to do with proteins changing over and becoming caramelized. Anyway, so you are actually being cooked very similar to the way that meat is cooked on the grill when you are physically exposed to sunlight. And let's go further. Sunlight has many layers to it. So there's the infrared aspect of it that makes you feel warm, and there's the UV aspect of it that can, cause you to become tan and cause changes in your skin. And P.S., the melanin that causes your skin to become a darker color when you're exposed to sunlight originates in your pineal gland. Okay, so we're starting to understand here. This gland emanates certain substances, certain hormones. Melanin, that's what happens when you get tan. Melatonin, this has to do with your circadian rhythm, your waking and sleeping cycle. And it emits another crucial hormone, DMT, or dimethyltryptamine. This is the hormone that is released upon entry and exit from this layer of reality. So it usually happens entry into the fetus as it is developing somewhere around day 45. It is called the quickening, the first time that consciousness enters into a fetus, and that the fetus is able to maintain, some level of that consciousness in there. That is when that little tiny developing body is flooded with DMT. And when a person dies, upon a near-death experience, like if you're in some kind of traumatic accident, or if you actually die, the pineal gland releases huge amounts of DMT, and that is literally the chemical doorway or stargate through which you travel. So now we're getting into butterfly thinking as opposed to caterpillar thinking, because I just said that the doorway through which you travel is a chemical doorway. It is a molecular doorway, and it's really an energetic or vibratory doorway. So This picture that I've got right here has everything to do with the interplay of Earth's magnetic field and the solar emanations. The sun, as I have described in the past, has a very large atmosphere around it called the heliosphere, and it is not necessarily a gaseous atmosphere. It is a magnetic atmosphere, and it's so large that it comprises every single one of the planets in the solar system, even out to the tiny non-planetoid planets of Pluto and beyond. So the sun emits this wind, and it is also a force of consciousness that is being exhaled at all times. Why does it have to do this? Because space is filled with all sorts of shit. All sorts of space debris is what I'm talking about. There's everything from the tiniest sand particle-sized, meteors, to giant comets, to giant asteroids. There's a lot of debris and a lot of things just flying around. And organic life is relatively vulnerable, and it needs to be protected. So I'm talking now about the analogy of the sun being like a big, giant protective umbrella, mama, dada, parent, that is protecting and sheltering the inner planets from all of the space debris. And, we can certainly see evidence if we look at the far side of the moon that is always facing outer space as opposed to the face that is always facing the planet. It is pockmarked and scarred by the many, many pieces of debris that have hit it. So, okay, we got a question about the release of DMT, and then we'll get back to pockmarks and scars. Question is the release of DMT during an impactful event why people who have traumatic events happen to them sometimes develop psychic abilities? DMT is released literally during a traumatic, near-death experience. So it's not enough just to have a bad fright. You really have to be, in a car wreck, and it really has to be, to the point of challenging the capacity of your biology to still be alive. It's not, or it can't be something that is merely a psychological trauma. That is not enough to incept the flooding of the body. And this would scientifically give us information about why some people go through near-death experiences or traumatic illnesses where they might die momentarily and then be revived, and then they might have more psychic capacities. Or there are apocryphal or stories, metaphors of people who have come back with healing abilities or the capacity to see diseases in others. And yeah, that's absolutely because of taking DMT. It kind of opens up that door of perception, quite literally. But then if you don't actually have to stay on the other side, you might be able to come back and actually make use of what you have been exposed to. So back to pineal gland. Okay. Well, anyway, I was talking, and then I'm going to take a brief pause and pause my Educreations recording. I was speaking about the Pyramid Code and the teaching about ancient Egypt and their glands, and the understanding that each chakra is associated with a gland on the body. So, and that your glands are endocrine system hormones bathing your body in these brain-changing chemicals. Well, DMT is one of those endogenous brain-changing chemicals, and you literally change the structure of your neurology and then achieve a hyperdimensional perception as you are achieving your adult or winged form. So this is happening on a planetary level, and this is happening on an individual level. Yes, so this is pretty exciting. If this is happening on a planetary level, we're talking about the consciousness of the entire planet. The entity that is the planet is getting to this level of manifestation. So hold on 1 minute while I press pause, save my stuff, and we won't necessarily have all of the pretty pictures, but I'll get the ones that matter the most. And saving it up, and it'll take a minute while it saves and processes and everything like that. because this has everything to do with, you know, what is the sun? And who are you in relation to the sun? You know, you're not just some hunk of meat or willy-nilly flesh or whatever. It's not just random and arbitrary to try to eat sunlight. Like, if you don't have all the backstory, it's like, oh, what a strange thing to be trying to do. But if you actually know about why this is all set up this way, it begins to make sense. You begin to say, now I understand why that is a valid premise and how we can be doing this. Okay, I was speaking about the sun, and I just saw another good relevant picture. Let me get this, the heliosphere. Where's my little picture of the heliosphere? I'll do this because it was fast and easy. Okay, beautiful, and let me get back to recording. This is a picture of the heliosphere. So we've got the sun over here, right where I just made that mark, that part on your screen. And then all the way moving across the screen, see where my finger is pointing on that shadow? That's actually Alpha Centauri, and that's like the edge of the heliosphere. So this is literally the sun's chakra system. Goes all the way out there. Like, this is, right, see that big vertical line? That's where Pluto is, all right? So our individual aura is about a hand span apart from your physical body. It's about as far apart if you stretch out your arms all up and around your entire body, 360 degrees. The analogy is, this is how big the sun is. This is how big our beautiful stellar parent is and how big its consciousness is. And it is constantly emitting. It emits energy and it emits particles, all right? So this is important stuff to understand. The solar wind is filled with both particles and energy, and it has an actual force. This is why comets have a tail. It's like my ponytail being blown out behind me while I'm running along. Well, that's why a comet has a tail, because it is the solar wind that is blowing material out behind it. Now I want you to stop thinking in terms of science. Throw science out the window and I'll get to that question in a minute, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the sun as consciousness. So let's see what is going on with Noel's chat. The question is, do Sol and Alpha Centauri overlap? That is a beautiful question. That's like saying, if I'm standing next to someone on the subway, do me and the guy next to me on the subway overlap? In a lot of ways, yes. Our energy fields overlap and have an impact on one another. So Sol and Alpha Centauri and a whole bunch of other stars all are having an impact on each other in terms of their heliosphere, or their non-physical energy presence, the big giant envelope that surrounds all of them. If there were no heliosphere, there would be so much cometary and asteroid and meteor impact that it would be very difficult for organic life to develop on any of the interior planets. And I've used this analogy before, that literally the sun is a conscious being and that we are members of its dream. The sun is our parent. It literally created, or let's say stars literally gave birth to the heavy elements that create our physical form and that we use to live, and the constant emanation or thinking of thoughts from the great thinker in the sky is what keeps us alive. But we need to have protection. We need to have an umbrella from the steady, constant stream. So that's what I was speaking about before in terms of Earth's magnetic field, that we have this protective field that prevents getting fried. It prevents surface Earth from being exposed to too much radiation. So this is important stuff, my friends, because I'm a responsible sharer of information. I'm not going to share not enough so that you get injured. So, you know, if I were telling you as a new visitor to the planet, hey, go to a beach and expose your skin to the sun, You know, that would be pretty irresponsible if I didn't tell you bring a hat, bring some sunglasses, bring something that's got some kind of sun protection factor in it, you know, whatever it is, if it's natural or chemical, but you need something. Yeah, okay, here's a question, and then I'm going to tell you about practicalities of sun gazing. When we die, do we pass back through the sun? Yes, the answer is not only when you die, but any time that you do these forms of stellar travel. That is how experts do star travel. When you go into the sun, you don't have to lose continuity of consciousness, but it does wash away everything that isn't the real you. So if you are only in alignment with the real you, you know, the ascended master within, it's like kind of like, oh no, whatever you do, don't throw me in the briar patch. Like, throw me in the briar patch. I'm not afraid, because all that's going to happen is it just washes away any of the detritus of the ego, and you already know that that's not who you are. So it doesn't take away who you are at all. The ego fears death because the ego knows that it will be unmade. But the eternal part within you does not have to fear death because it knows that it is eternal. So, hold on a second. There are beautiful star beings who travel through the stargate that is the sun. And I'm also getting on to like practicalities of, you know, when you become an adept sun gazer and everything like that, that you become able to use these higher dimensional portals to travel to the sun yourself. So again, any being that has to actually get in a clank metal spaceship and like drive to another planet is not very advanced. They're still living like caterpillars. Are you kidding me? That's like saying I got in my fancy spaceship so that I could drive to another planet. Like, no. What real experts do is they hop through an interdimensional portal. And these portals can be found at the center of every star, at the center of every planet, and at the center of each one of us, because we all have our chakras and the singularity that is at the center of each one of our chakras. And it's really all about embodying the truth that the singularity that is within you here is the same singularity that is within the sun. That both of these points are the same point, but it's hopping back and forth so fast that it's in two places. This is what I have in the meditation. So I sent out this morning an email that has the recorded lesson, which is 1 half-hour recorded lesson, that's lesson 13, and 2 recorded meditations, because like I can talk and talk and talk about this, but it's really like a type of acrobatics of your energy system, and it's a lot better to see an example of it. So I just did an example of it, and so there's a recording that I did in my backyard in Woodstock on a beautiful spring morning of exactly how I sun gaze. So again, sun gazing is different than sunbathing. I certainly expose my physical body to the sun in my bikini, like that's nice, but sun gazing is different, and you don't have to take off your clothes in order to do it. You don't even have to physically expose your forehead to the sun in order to do it, but I like to do it, and I like the feeling of the sun physically on my face. So, and you know, it doesn't have to take a very long time. It can take 5 minutes. So these are the nuts and bolts of how to do sun gazing, and this is also why it is important, because literally this is the food that we will be eating in the future. We're in transition, we're changing over. Let's say we're changing over our energy source from combustion, which is when you eat food and then literally burn it in your body, and then contrast that with running on pure consciousness, which would be ingesting the idea or the experience of food. Kind of like, what if someone plugged you into a very good version of virtual reality where you were wearing helmets and, you know, your nerves were being stimulated and you were given the direct neural stimulation of eating some wonderful good food, and that you would receive all the nourishment that is necessary in that way. So again, people are afraid of death because the ego is afraid of not existing anymore. So if you go into the sun, you're afraid, oh no, I'm going to melt away. Don't be afraid, because the real part of you doesn't melt away. But this is also what I do with demons. When demons come to me and they are trying to harm me or eat parts of me, I send them to the sun, and I send them back to the great galactic central sun. And they don't want to go because it's kind of like waking up from a dream or a nightmare. They've been in a nightmare reality for thousands of years. And I tell them, you were once a beautiful spark of God, and you were once a beautiful divine instrument, and now you've become distorted, and it's time for you to wake up from that distortion and remember who you really are or were meant to be. And then I send them up there, and then they get, so evil beings, demonic beings, heavily distorted beings, lower vibration, negative service to self entities, when they enter the sun, they get almost completely obliterated, because they're pretty much like 99% distortion and one little tiny kernel of real spark of divinity in there. Let's contrast that with someone who is an ascended master. Ascended master is 100% good stuff. That's like vernacular, but is 100% in complete alignment with higher consciousness and does not have any lower vibrational distortion that is arising merely from being submerged in lower densities. Those beings, if you send them to the sun, it's kind of like like I'm showering up, I'm in the sun, like this is so happy and comfortable, I'm totally in my element, because they're beings of pure light. If you're a being of pure light, why would you be afraid of taking a sun shower? Would it wash away any of your light? No. And I've had the experience myself of taking a sun shower and a sun bath, and what it felt like, because my chakras were perfectly aligned, and they aligned with all of the beautiful curves of the emanations of the sun. It's like saying my consciousness was completely clear, and I aligned with the sun's consciousness, and its chakras and my chakras were one and the same. And I didn't die, and I didn't lose continuity of consciousness, meaning I didn't forget who I was or what my agenda was, or all of a sudden be like, I'm a new person and I have a completely new agenda, which is what people are really afraid of. They're like, oh no, I'm going to be reborn, and then I'm going to have to start anew and do everything in a new way and get new identity and new clothes and new everything. It's like, oh, how troublesome, to be reborn. But it's like, no, it's not like that. You're not going to forget who you are and have to come here as if you are a baby or a walk-in or something like that. You'll remember the real you. But what happened was the things that aren't the real me got washed away. And so all of the pettiness and all of the hurt, things that really arise only from being submerged in the temporal world, like where you don't have the perspective of why shit happens. Why did shit happen? Why did that bad thing happen to me? Why did that illness happen to me? Why did any of these things happen to me that made me feel bad or sad or hurt, or I saw someone else feel bad or sad or hurt? The answer is that there was a meta, there was an overarching reason for those, but I didn't see it from my perspective, and it gave me bad feelings. When I was given the overarching perspective during my sun bath, I saw the meta, and I was like, such and such happened because of this. This happened because of this. I lost out on this because of this, and it had to happen because of this. And then my feelings were healed, and healed literally means made whole. So, and I'm still the same person. I didn't have to stop being who I was and die in order to have that healing. So, this is why I say that in terms of interacting with hyperdimensional, interdimensional, or extraterrestrial beings, you want to interact with the beings that come through the stargate of the sun. Those are the guys that you want to spend time with, because it means they are cleansed. In order for them to go through the sun gate, they have to be cleansed in their inner personality and come through and be a pure person. So those are the beings that you want to spend time with. Guess what? The other beings that are more lower vibrational and service to self, they invented clank clank metal spaceships because they couldn't use this network. If they got into the Sungate, Stargate network, they would have to essentially face the music or face the reality of what they have created for themselves in their consciousness, and they're not willing to do that. So they utilize technology to fill in the gaps. This is what I am talking about when I say, do not go down the slippery slope of transhumanism. The idea of embracing technology in order to fill in the gaps of spirituality, really, the only thing that you need is spiritual technology. Even though humans in their present state are very vulnerable, like, I would not send you to live outside without a tent or like a blanket, Animals can do that. Sasquatch can do that. Humans, no, you can't do that. You're vulnerable and weak and need a lot of support. You need to live inside of a house and have special food, and you need to cook your food and cut it with utensils. You don't just use your teeth and eat it raw. Humans require all of this extra help just to be alive. And that is not your natural state. And it gives you the sense that you always will need to acquire some form of exterior technology. But really, when you achieve your adult winged form, when you undergo the bathing of your interior body by these magical transformative substances that are derived from your pineal gland and other glands within your body, you will change and become able to live without exterior technology. So there have been some examples of this in our world, because the skeptical, rational mind of objective materialism needs examples. So if you're into it and want to do some research, you can check out Therese von Neumann. She was a Bavarian saint and mystic and stigmatic of the 1940s. She lived the last 25 years of her life on nothing but pure sunlight. Devoted entirely to Christ, she ate through her third eye. There's some good yogis of the Far East who have done some similar feats. And there was another one that I wanted to tell you about, but it's almost slipping my mind. Come back. Okay, but anyway, we'll get more into the amazing capacities. Oh, how about this? Milarepa, translated as cotton wearer, because he was able to create his own microclimate, as many of these practitioners from the Far East are able to do. He was able to exude heat from his body and live in the Himalayas, a deeply frozen world, without anything other than a small cotton loincloth. So these are examples of people who achieved these high levels of personal development in order to inspire the rest of us to what is possible with your human technology. So you don't need a clank metal spaceship to fly. You only need your spirit technology. And I was speaking in previous classes about the Merkaba and utilizing your third eye to visualize these complex geometric structures that are structures made of light. Your mind is made of light, and when you imagine things, you're imagining things made of light, and they have a real a veracity in the world of light. So all of this has to do with why sun gaze. Sun gazing is like the very first step once you have matriculated into the university of the universe, and you have achieved a level of unconditional love, right? I'm pointing to my heart right now. So you're able to, like in lesson 5, meditate. You're able to master your mind, to stop the hacked operating system from speaking all the time. Because when you're speaking to the sun, you can't be busy chatting. You can't be busy in your brain speaking the way that most people usually are. It is necessary to turn off the chattering mind in order to connect to this higher, hyperdimensional consciousness, okay? So that's the first thing, learning how to meditate and creating enough momentum at the level of unconditional love to even activate the insight and to attenuate or reach out to the sun. Now, these are some of the key aspects here. I've told you that before. This is a receptive chakra, and it also is aggressive. It can reach out. When you reach out, you are reaching out with your attention. You are attenuating, reaching or stretching towards something. Literally, like imagine my nose is growing long like Pinocchio. Whatever I'm, looking at, my nose is going to touch it. That's what is happening with your third eye. It is literally growing outward. And whatever you think of, you are reaching towards. So let's say I'm like, I want to learn about flowers. I'm reaching my mind out towards a bowl of petunias. I want to learn about flowers. So I can learn about them by finding an actual bowl of petunias and connecting my third eye to them. Or I can find a picture of the flowers that I want to learn about, and I can connect my third eye to those flowers through the picture. You don't have to have the physical item there, because remember when I was using my pen as an example of folding space and time in this lesson? You can fold space and time. So that means that you can access the petunia-ness of petunias even if you don't have them physically in your presence. You can connect with their energetic signature. This begins to give you an idea of how you can utilize your third eye to speak to beings from the past. You can speak to historical figures from the past. Whatever, pull out $1 from your wallet and look at a picture of George Washington, and you can use that to tune in to the energetic signature of George Washington. That was a random thing that I just thought of, but really, any person that you would like to connect with. And same thing with any person who might exist in the future, or who might exist over such vast interstellar distances that it would take many billions of years into the future for you to actually fly to where they are. So this is a different way of using your mind, all right? And now let's talk a little bit about the crossing over points of between Earth's magnetic field and the heliosphere. So I had this other picture that was up before that I think was a little bit better, but it showed it anyway, but I'll show it as best I can. That the sun has these emanations, like let's say this is part of the sun's magnetic field, and then Earth has her own magnetic field, and it's let's say that's a magnetic line of force that is coming out of the sun, all right? Just very quick here, this purple dot over here, that's the planet. Where these two lines cross, and I'm making a cross here, a big giant red X, where those magnetic lines of force cross, there is an interplay of consciousness. And this is the type of portal or dimensional portal that one might utilize when one begins to A, matriculate to the University of the Universe by achieving unconditional love, and B, activate your insight, your inner vision, and your pineal gland so that you can see, create a Merkaba or light body vehicle that you can use to D, get in touch with one of these magnetic portals and travel 93 million miles this quickly. Because you are not traveling the whole entire 93 million miles like a caterpillar that has to inch its way across the entire surface of the leaf. You're a butterfly. You can lift off and fly directly there, or what I do as a butterfly, I fold. I fold space and time, and I don't have to move at all. This is the magic of the flying rainbow lasagna. So this is what this, let me hold it in front of the camera so you can see it. This is an interdimensional portal tool that I am able to use, connecting one side with the singularity that is within me as an individual, and one side with either the singularity that is inside of the planet Earth, or the sun, or any star that I would like to connect with, or, and I know the camera just got a little bit dark, or the entire galaxy, or the entire universe. And the way that that feels when I am, so, okay, and also sun gazing is a very active, not a passive thing. It is very athletic. It reminds me of physical lovemaking. Physical lovemaking requires breath control, muscle control, use of energy, filling up your energetic reservoirs, and it requires the use of some of the same aspects of energy coming up your spine, the kundalini. So in order to have sexual orgasm, one stimulates the lower chakras, cultivates energy in the energy centers, and sends it up and out through the crown chakra at the top of the head. In order to sun gaze, the connection is very similar, but instead of the energy just going up and out the top of the head like a fountain, it comes out and it circulates back around the back of the head, coming in through the back of the third eye, and then exits the forehead and goes back to the sun. And the whole point of this is creating a giant feedback loop. We began this presentation tonight talking about quantum entanglement. The idea that photons born in the sun and emitted from the sun have partners. You've got a photonic partner. It's called your light body. It lives in the sun. You live in the sun. If you can embody that truth, literally, you don't have to be here anymore. You can be there or travel on beams of light. You can travel wherever you like. I love that movie K-Pax because he talks about traveling on beams of light. So this is how you can tell true divine spiritual technology as opposed to ersatz, not very impressive metal clank clank technology. True technology, you don't have to pay for it. Sunlight is free. It is a gift. You don't have to pay for it. You just have to learn how to use it. All of these higher dimensional, interdimensional portals, you don't have to pay for them. It's not like you have a subscription service to the Stargate so you can get through on like some kind of easy pass, you know, that's like tracking your movements. It's not like that at all. It is much more about love and much more about consciousness. Because think about it. If you've got this network of stars and network of Stargates, who gets to go through? The elite, the wealthy. It's kind of like making the bridge very expensive to get into Manhattan. Kind of keeps out the riffraff because you don't have enough money. If you don't have $12 to get across the bridge in Manhattan, to get into Manhattan, you probably don't have the amount of money that it is required to purchase food or even, you know, a minor thing or to perform any kind of activity in that zone. So basically, if you don't have the money to get there, you don't have any purpose being there. This is not true in the higher dimensional realms. The higher dimensional realms, true wealth or true currency is not about how much moolah, like, you know, like how much physical object or mass you have. It is about how much consciousness you have. So in order to utilize this Stargate back here, you have to really cultivate yourself. And this is why different races have built technology that kind of gets around. You know, to use this Stargate, you have to be a very loving person. You have to learn about unconditional love. You have to cultivate yourself. You have to hone your ego so that you're not petty, you're not ridiculous. And then, you know, it's like, you know, it's like someone becoming a martial arts master. And yes, eventually you could, you know, use your hand in order to saw through wood. But it's like by the time you get to that level, you're not going to be a master carpenter using your bare hands in order to saw wood. Like you've achieved a higher level. So all of these cultivation of consciousness that one must go through in order to learn how to use these portals for transportation, you end up really changing a lot so that you're not just like, oh yes, let's use these portals of consciousness for ordinary commerce. It's not like that. It becomes more of a sacred activity in the same way that we look at birth and death. Literally, that is consciousness coming and going. And we say, hey, you know something, death and birth, these are controlled by a higher order and they have a more meaning and significance than just like commerce, like I bought a thing over here and trucked it or shipped it over here and then sold it to this person over here. So we would not be utilizing these portals of consciousness for ordinary schlepping, is what I'm trying to say. Once you begin to become adept enough to use these portals, your motivation is not to buy low and sell high and see if you can somehow make money off of the capitalistic system. Your motivation becomes very different. And being stuck in the buy low, sell high capitalistic idea is caterpillar thinking. And it keeps you stuck to the surface of the leaf, and it makes it harder to hang out with butterflies, who are the higher dimensional beings that you really want to be hanging out with. So I'm now going to complete the educreations lesson. That is getting saved, and open the floor to more questions, and I can talk more about Israel or whatever questions arose from the email. Sorry that some answers are too long to take the time to write out, and it's a lot easier for me to answer them in person here. And I'll change the camera in a moment so that it won't be quite so loud back there, quite so bright. So yes, opening up the floor to, here we go. Noel has a question. Were the beings who visited us thousands of years ago and enslaved us considered artificially advanced due to physical space travel, or did they visit us through non-physical means? The ones who enslaved, and that is a great question. Thank you very much for that. The beings who enslaved humanity were not beings of pure unconditional love. They were lower vibrational beings who were interested in power over others and serving themselves. So with that personality characteristic, or with that profile in mind, it can be understood that they didn't have the capacity to use a Stargate like I was just talking about, because they were not unconditionally loving. If they went through the sun and a Stargate, they would, all of their lower vibrational aspects of self would be wiped away, and all of their motivations would be wiped away. So imagine that. Imagine if you're like, I'm on my way to do something evil. All I have to do is get through this Stargate, and then I'll be able to do that evil thing. And by the time you get through the Stargate, like, all of the evil is wiped away, and you can't do that evil thing. So in order to control and dominate others, those beings that were motivated in that way, they had to develop a non-divine technology. And no offense to, all of the computer stuff, all of this type of technology, no offense to it, but it is not divine. It's not, because if I took a hammer and I smashed this camera, the camera would not fix itself. It would not heal itself. But you know something, if you take a hammer and you smash your thumb, it hurts a lot. I've done it. But then your thumb fixes itself, because you are made of divine technology. So Earth was visited and impacted by extraterrestrials many times, some of whom came in clank metal spaceships and are not very much more advanced than you or I. Like, imagine if you took you or me, put us in a silver leotard, kind of sent us a few hundred years into the future, but didn't really change on a deep inner level. That's kind of what their society and technology is like. Contrast that with someone who has cultivated themselves through Buddhist meditation, where they're operating on a higher level from the direction of unconditional love. And if they built a society, they would build a beautiful society more similar to what is going on in Bhutan, egalitarian and sustainable and recognizing the beauty of the planet and everything like that. I know I went a little far afield on there, but basically the Anunnaki and the Sumerian clay tablets talk a lot about the higher dimensional beings who were mistaken as gods, and they were worshipped as gods, and they relied upon various different forms of technology in order to be powerful over little vulnerable humans like you and me. And anytime that a god needs a magic box, or a magic anything, or a magic wand, a magical implement. A lot of the Anunnaki in carvings, they have a a magical handbag. It looks like a small evening bag. So they knew how to accessorize, and it was somehow filled with, you know, their magic and their power. Any deity that receives its specialness from some external technology, or gets its mojo from its juju, it's not really a divine being, and it's using that technology really to just oppress a slightly younger kid on the playground, but that's not a very advanced being. And I know while I was giving that answer, another question came up. So Mike says, is there a way to identify an ET as far as whether they got here via a clank metal spaceship or through the sun? Absolutely. So light beings travel on light. They travel on wings of pure light. And the challenge is that a lot of the light beings that are here, like they came through the portal of the sun, and they are here. It's like that David Bowie song. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow your mind. These higher dimensional beings are really, really bright. And if they expose themselves to you without any kind of filter, sometimes it can be too much. Like some people, their neurology and their mind cannot accept that level of intensity of, it is blinding, like light and information and love and goodness, but it can be too intense, and it can cause severe neurological changes. Like you get blasted is the point. And not everybody can withstand that level of being blasted. That's why those beings are really good beings. They don't want to fry humanity, so they have been hanging out in between the sun and the earth. They've got kind of like a mid-level place where they hang out, and they speak through intermediaries. And the intermediaries are often earth organisms such as giant redwood trees, blue whales, dolphins, like some of these extremely loving and high vibration organisms are used as physical conduits for these beings that they're light. They don't have a physical body like you and I have a physical body, so they use physical beings in order to be a conduit. But basically, one day you'll meet them, all right? And what they look like when I perceive them, they are brilliantly bright. They look like they're made of some kind of like a crystal. You know, like my ring is made of a crystal. They are beautiful. I keep using that word, but there's symmetry, there's divine harmony. They look a lot like my paintings. If I could paint what they look like, you know, I would. If I could take a snapshot, painted portrait of what they look like, their faces, like they don't necessarily have two eyes and a nose and a mouth, but their faces and their features often are made up of various, you know, shapes and perfect geometries. They look like crystals. Mike asks, do they give a feeling of love? The answer is yes. It is like blazing, intense, unconditional love. And it's a type of thing that can be more than some people can bear, that feeling, because people often feel unworthy. And when one of these, I use the word angelic, like really higher vibrational beings, when they love you, sometimes people feel like kind of like, no, not me, I'm not worthy, like I'm just a lowly worm, like you can't love me that much, because they really love you. They really care about you, and they see all of your bumps and bruises and warts and quote unquote imperfections, and they love you anyway. Like their love is as fierce or more fierce than any parent, you know, mother or father or, you know, caregiver can feel for a person. Like they are really, really powerful in their love, and it's an intensity that many people are not willing to accept because of their own feelings of unworthiness. So Noel says, self-esteem is crucial to spiritual advancement. Yes, and it is also self-love and self-acceptance. Like if you do not love yourself, You cannot imagine anyone else actually loving you. And this is the real challenge, that we come here into these lower levels, these levels of density, and everybody has distortions, everybody makes mistakes, and it is crucial to be compassionate and loving towards yourself and towards others. And so these very fiercely loving higher dimensional beings, they will look at you, and they don't just look at a tiny little sliver, they look at the totality of who you are. They look at everything you've been through and how that influenced who you are now and who you are going to be, how that's going to, impact the world. Because they see the totality, they are much less judgmental, and they can give that support and that nourishment to you or people who are in a limited viewpoint, because we are submerged in time and we don't necessarily see all the way down the road of what we will be experiencing in the future. But like, to use an example, let's say someone who is currently like a heroin addict or has some severe substance abuse issue, but they might get over that addiction and then end up becoming a drug counselor and helping others. So if you watch that person's whole trajectory, you see, oh, this is happening for a reason over here, and then they turn it into something that serves others over here. So these higher dimensional beings that come through the sun are fiercely loving, and they're very non-judgmental. They're not pointing the finger at you and saying, nah, you're bad, you're wrong, you did something bad. The only beings who do that, and I call them like Statler and Waldorf. This is from The Muppet Show, so I don't know if you know that reference, but The Muppet Show used to have these two characters that sat in the balcony and always had negative little cutting remarks to make about what was going on the show. Like if someone played a wrong note or if someone said something that wasn't funny, these two characters would always have something to chime in and say. And they're like the epitome or personification of negativity and doubt. And each one of us is subjected to those voices of negativity and doubt, especially if you're a creative person, you're trying to create or build or do anything. So anytime that you're trying to make something new, make something happen, there will be these voices that are like, critical and negative, and they always say, they're all too happy to point out your flaws and never to celebrate your successes. And there's also, I call them Schadenfreude, because there's the German word for, receiving a type of perverse pleasure in other people failing. And those entities, they try to feed off of us during our life experience, but they are the antithesis of the beings that are really here to help us and love us, and that love us so much. So and it's a simplification to say that there are two camps. There are more than just two flavors of entities, but there are these very fiercely loving entities that are watching us, from above and rooting for us and supporting us and want to see us thrive. And then there's the other version, which they just love to see you stumble. They love to see you fall and fail and fall flat on your face. And that is not love. And I'll tell you just very briefly, most of what is considered comedy or quote unquote funny in this time and place is not funny to me at all. Very few comedians are funny to me, because a lot of humor is based on essentially deriving some perverse joy from the pain or failure from someone else. Mike says the Three Stooges seem negative, and I would agree that almost all physical comedy that is based on someone getting hurt is not loving. And Joan Rivers, the comedian who recently died, sometimes I do check in with the recently departed in order to talk with them and see what their journey is like and see what they learned. And to contrast, like when I checked in with Robin Williams when he passed on, he was really a humanist, and a lot of his acting was all about connecting to people on a deep level and real unconditional love and really coming to respect other people. Joan Rivers' comic style was really all about being very mean. She was not a humanist. She was not caring about people, and her comedy really reflected that. When I checked in with her on the other side, she said to me she realized right away that her entire life was fake. like in the same way that she had made her face very fake with a lot of plastic surgery, that she was almost all ego and almost no integrity. And this is what really happens when you go into the sun. For some people, it is a death journey, but for some people, it is just a transformation. When you go into the sun with your consciousness, you really face the mirror, like unconditionally, just abstractly, who and what you are. And so you don't have to only have a life review if you're dead and mangled and your body is no longer viable. You can have a life review while you're still corporeal, because that's when it does the most good. And ayahuasca, which is external DMT, often prompts a life review. So there are meditation aspects and you can do hypnotherapy also in order to do a life review. So you don't have to die, and you don't have to just take DMT in order to do this. But yes, achieving the perspective that comes from having a full life review. And that Joan Rivers' comedy was very cruel and not loving. And when she went into the sun, basically everything that she thought was her and who she was got washed away. Imagine if you were like, I believe it was one of the Elizabethan queens. She died with like a huge accumulation of white makeup on her face. It was a sign of beauty at the time. People put on layers and layers and layers of this lead white makeup. She ended up dying of lead poisoning, and had like a very thick crust of makeup on her skin. Thank you. Noel is my history buff. He's informing me this is Queen Elizabeth I. So imagine that crust of makeup on Elizabeth's face was like people's ego and the things that get layered on as you live. You know, let's say that you achieve some moderate success by doing whatever, if it is having a job or having a show or whatever it is, and then you have that layer that says, that's who I am, I'm that person, I was successful. And then you die, or you go to the sun and you have a sun bath, and all of those layers are washed away, and you get to the real you. And you realize, wait, this is my real face. This is who I really am. I'm not that mean, cutting, bitchy person that built an entire career off of making mean comments about other people. I'm actually a very loving person who totally accepts other people. But of course, if she had been a very loving person, she wouldn't have had the career that she had, because we live in a very unloving society. So this is just not to harp too much on dead celebrities, but this is just to give you a little bit of an idea of, a person like that who goes through a transformation like that, the next experience that they have, they usually choose to be much more authentic. Like a person who looks like their true self, acts like their true self, focuses on real relationships that really matter. Like, instead of being a fake, shallow Hollywood person who's got a million friends, but no one is really there to help you out when you really need help, being a person who might have 5 or 6 or 7 really good, close life friends that are really there, like friends who will help you move. Those are real friends, So Noel says about Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Elizabeth I and I share the same birthday, and I have always felt a strong past life connection with her. Very interesting, Noel. I hope that you do not die of lead poisoning from vanity. Want to open up the floor to any other questions? If you now, in the recorded lessons and the meditations, I have step-by-step instructions about beginning your own sun gazing practice. So I don't know if any of you have actually started the practice. I encourage you to. There's no time like the present. Very good, excellent. And like any practice, you start small. Like, I don't say go out and run a marathon, run 26 miles for your first training mission. Like, no, you run 3 miles the first day. So something like a few moments of sun gazing early in the day or late in the day is more than enough for being a beginner. And like anything, as you begin to be stronger, and the more that you do it, the better you get at it. So it is a skill, and if you fall out of practice, you need to get back into shape. Okay, so Noel said, Mike's been working on it. Noel says, I have casually done so, but have not sat in practice since this class. And that's okay. You know, so I understand that life can be very busy, life can be very crazy. However, it is really worth it. Take time, set a little bit of time aside to do this, because it's like this activity will fuel every other activity during your day. If your day includes any physical activity or exercise, any thought or creative process, any socialization, or any aspect of perception, if you do a little bit of sun gazing will help you with your food and your physical activity, your socialization, and basically, this is how I feel about it. It fills up my inner energy banks, so I have battery power. That means I have something inside of myself when it's time for me to have a social interaction, or to speak with others, or, you know, to do something like this class, or to record a video or something like that. That takes energy. Before I do any of these things, I go and get in the sun. So I spent time today. I just really recommend I do it before I paint. I do it before I sing or make music. And I, you know, like anything, like if you haven't done exercise, and then it's like, okay, you gotta exercise, but then at a certain point, exercise energizes you and it actually fills up your batteries. That's how I feel about sun gazing. It's like I don't have to have my arm twisted and be like, okay, it's time for you to sun gaze, you have to do this now. I'm much more like, wow, I hope it's a sunny day because I really need to get out there and fill up. And so even if I'm able to take a few moments of quietude, of inner solitude, and connecting directly to the sun. And I told you, I think my favorite time to do it is at the end of the day, because I can usually set up my schedule. If it's just around 7 o'clock or so, I can usually be someplace where I can see the sun going down to the horizon. And also, you know, I can do it during the middle of the day, but I do wear a hat, and I put on some skin oils to protect my skin. So again, the cautions and everything, like if you're going to run a marathon, wear good shoes and wear a sports bra, because you're gonna need one. So anybody who needs guidance or further information about getting started on sun gazing, if you haven't started yet, that's okay. No, there's no time like the present, or like, you know, beginning tomorrow. And then you can note your own changes. Crystal was a person in this class, and she told me she's been having good luck with having her physical eyes totally closed. She does not open her eyes at all, but she does connect with her third eye. So that was some information I wanted to pass along to you from her. And I think this is information from Lucy. She says, I'm still working on the Merkaba. The spinning has been stumping me. Shall I leave this and try sun gazing? The answer is, you don't have to stop doing one in order to do the other, and the two are interconnected. So while you are sun gazing, you can definitely work on envisioning your Merkaba, and the two absolutely strengthen each other. It's like lifting weights can make you a better runner. But wait, why do you have to have muscles in your arm in order to run? Or don't you have to have muscles in your leg? It's like, no, when you run, you use your whole body. So you use your whole body when you are doing these esoteric practices, and they all feed into each other, because you're cultivating your light body, and then you're using your light body, just like cultivating your muscles and then using your body to dance or to do something like that. Okay, so another question from Noel. What was the most salient point that he missed about the Israelites? Okay, so actually I am going to complete the recording